Is Grandma still alive? Asked Tony from the back seat. Tina glanced in the rearview mirror. Her 4-year-old son was deep in thought. He had just recently learned about death and was trying to grasp the concept. Of course, honey, Grandma's still alive, and she will be for a long time. Until she's 100? Asked Tony. At least, said Tina and smiled. There was a moment of silence, but she could see that the little wheels were turning in her son's little brain. Is Grandma's house still alive? Tina got uncomfortable. I hope not, she thought, but didn't say it out loud. I don't know, sweetie, probably. But Grandma's house is very old, right? Yes. More than 100 years old? Yes, it was one of the first houses in town, so more than 300, I guess. How can it still be alive then? Well, Grandma's house is a special house. It lives for a really long time. Tony was thinking for another moment. Is Grandma's house haunted? Where did you hear that word, sweetie? Uncle Joey? Of course, from Uncle Joey, she mumbled under her breath. Listen, honey, you don't have to be afraid. Grandma's house is a nice haunted house, and Mommy will be there the whole time with you. I'm not afraid, said Tony and shrugged his shoulders. Good, Tina said, but in all honesty, she was very nervous. The truth is that Grandma's house has been acting up the past few years. It started with little things, some nighttime whispers and screams here and there, but it got eventually worse. 2 years ago, Tina's mom slipped and fell from the stairs because all the steps suddenly disappeared. Since then, she's been begging her mom to move away or do something about the house. And now she hadn't heard from her in a few days, which was very strange, since Grandma Gina always wanted to hear all about little Tony. But she wouldn't answer her calls or call back. She knew something was wrong as soon as they pulled up to the house off the dirt road behind the trees. There was a spooky darkness inside, even if it was a beautiful summer day outside. We're here, she said to Tony. She was wishing again she could have found a babysitter on such short notice. She looked into Tony's eyes after they got out. Listen to me, sweetie. No matter what, you have to stay next to Mama, okay? The whole time. Sounds boring, Tony said. You'll be fine, she answered as they started walking up the stairs. Hi, house, she said to the house with a smile on her face. A playful jingle came from the wind chimes, and the old boards on the porch creaked happily. Tony giggled. Tina knocked. Mom! Mom, are you home? No answer. The house played a playful melody on the wind chimes to Tony. She was very excited to see them. It had been a long time. Tina knocked again. Who is it? Her mother's voice finally came from inside. Mom, it's me. Open the door. Tina! What a surprise. Open the door already, Mom. The door hesitantly opened. Grandma Gina was standing in the dimly lit hallway, wearing a nightgown. Mom, you do know that it's the middle of the day, right? Grandma Gina peeked outside. Oh, it is. Then she noticed her grandson. Tony! You're here too. What a pleasant surprise. Tony gave the biggest hug to Grandma. Laughing voices came from inside the house. Well, come on in. I'll make you some hot chocolate. House, can we have some more light, please? The daylight finally found its way into the house and chased away the shadows. They all went to the kitchen. Mom, I've been calling you for days. Why haven't you called me back? Oh, the phone hasn't been working well, Grandma Gina said indifferently as she started making the hot chocolate. You want one too? Tina shook her head. She was mad. Is it broken? The phone. No, it's probably a signal thing. Mom, you could have walked over to Margaret's and called from there. I was worried sick. I guess I just lost track of time. There have been some good shows on TV. Here you go, little Tony. She placed the hot chocolate in front of the boy. The cup inched away from the boy, then it did a flip without spilling a drop. Tony was amused. That's when Tina noticed the bandage on her mother's arm under the nightgown sleeve. "What is that, Mom?" "Oh, it's nothing." "Do not lie to me." "Hey, Tony, why don't we go out to the backyard? It's a beautiful day out, after all. You can bring your cup, honey." Tony carefully walked so he doesn't spill the hot chocolate, but then a force lifted him up and he floated in midair to the back door. "Careful, House," said Tina. Once outside, Tina finally confronted her mother as Tony sipped on his drink at the table just a few feet away. "What is really going on, Mom?" Tina was mad, but she tried to keep her voice down. "Well, there might have been a little incident, honey. No big deal." "Show me." Grandma Gina hesitantly pulled up the bandage on her arm a bit so that Tina could see the claw and fang marks underneath her thin, pale skin. "Mom, we talked about this." "She didn't mean it. She's a good house. She probably just got confused." "Yeah, well, she's been getting confused a lot lately." Tina looked at the wounds. "Not infected. Good. So what did this?" "Some invisible creatures. They came out of nowhere, but they quickly disappeared, too." Tina couldn't believe her ears. "They? Are there more wounds?" Grandma Gina gestured that the marks were all over her body. "They're not that bad, though." "I don't care. I'm taking you to see Dr. Wells and this house. You have to move. There are no more chances." "I'm not moving from here, Tina. I grew up in this house. And I'm definitely not going to some home. White Oak is a nice place." "I don't care. I'm not leaving from here." "Well, then you know what we have to do." "Not that. It's not time yet." "How bad do you want it to get before it's time?" That was when Tina noticed that Tony was missing. "Tony?" Laughter came from the house, the boys' laughter. Tina and Grandma Gina ran in the house. Tina's heart was beating in her chest. It was pitch black inside. Little Tony's giggle echoed from every direction. "House, light!" Grandma Gina shouted. A tiny light appeared in the endless darkness, not bigger than a candlelight, except it was blue and cold. Tony's giggles became louder, so loud that it almost knocked them off their feet. Then they saw the boy. He was hanging upside down and spinning around as if he were inside of a twister. He was having the best time, but the whole thing was too fast and seemed too dangerous. "House, put him down!" Tina shouted, but the house either didn't hear her or decided not to obey. "That's enough, House! Put him down!" Grandma Gina shouted too. But instead, they all disappeared. They were in a field under the night sky. Tony was jumping up and down. His jumps were as high as a building, and he was able to do all kinds of tricks. But he didn't see the skeletons rising from the ground behind him and slowly crawling toward him. Tina and Grandma Gina shouted, but their voices were swallowed by silence. Tina then started running toward Tony, but it was as if she was running underwater. She just couldn't get any closer. The skeletons had almost gotten to the boy. And that's when Tony finally turned around and finally saw the terrifying creatures. He screamed. The spell broke, and they found themselves back at the house. The boy fell from the ceiling, but luckily his mother was right there to catch him. Tina, Tony, and Grandma Gina ran back out into the yard. The afternoon sun was as bright as ever, but they were shivering. They dropped on the grass. Tony buried his head into his mother's shoulder. Tina was just staring at her mother without a word, her mouth as thin as a blade. Grandma Gina sighed as she looked at her grandson with guilt in her eyes. "Oh, all right, fine," she said. "I'll call Father Bernard to set up the exorcism for tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Grandma Gina couldn't hold her tears back as she looked at the house. "I want to spend one last night with her.